I'm Jo Hughes. I'm the Operations Director for Hampton Knight, part of the Medigold Health Group. I started with Hampton Knight back in 2002. After it was my dad that started the company in May of 2000, which actually started in our living room back in 2000. So I've been sort of aware of the business and been involved in the business in some capacity since then. But started full time when I was 18, as I say, back in 2002. And I suppose over the last sort of 20 years, sort of done pretty much every role in the business over that time, from sales, admin, training. When we started the collection service, I was part of the collection network in the early days, and would sort of, from where we are in the Midlands, we can get quite far in 2 hours. So very often would kind of respond and do a call out in the northeast and just get there in the 2 hours. And my role obviously now is focused on the operation delivery for the alcohol and drug testing within the Medigold group. So a lot more of a focused role, sort of a lot of project work, working on the strategies or long-term initiatives, and also making sure that our service kind of continues to operate as it should be for our clients. So my dad started the company, as I say, back in 2000. He actually worked for another provider at the time, and didn't quite like the way that they operated. They didn't sort of feel kind of connected to their values and, as I say, to the way that they operated. So he made the decision to start the business. The name Hampton Knight, so Knight comes from our family name. So we used to be double barrel, so it used to be Knight Wakeham. But my granddad, so my dad's dad, dropped the Knight and we just became Wakeham. So he wanted to really kind of incorporate the name Knight, if he could, into the business. And then really Hampton, just because it sounded nice. And also when he started the company, there was a lot of businesses at the time that would have sort of the name, sort of drug or something in the name of the business. And I think even in those early days, he knew that it wouldn't just be alcohol and drug testing that we would do. So he wanted a name that was quite generic, and could sort of adapt quite easily if we did sort of go into different areas or different avenues. So that's why, yeah, that's where the name Hampton Knight came from. I think we stayed in our house for just under a year. And Nikki Wallace, who is still part of the business, she was the first employee that came on board, and she worked from our lounge as well. And then we moved to a serviced office about a year later. So there was about 3 desks in that office. And that kind of saw us through for a couple of years, and then sort of gradually we went to another office in Tamworth Town Centre, and we had a couple of administrators in there, and then yeah, have had a couple of offices since then. And the last office that we've been in for 10 years, we probably had about 40-50 people working out of that office when it was at full capacity. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey from the front living room. And we used to store all of like the kits in there and do the training packs and everything. It was like a little bit of a hub from our lounge, and it was a small house, so it took up a lot of space. And then obviously moving on through the offices over the years. Yeah, like you say, I think any business, especially in those early days, you have to be able to wear many hats, and you have to be able to sort of juggle. And as I say, I would go from doing sort of administration one morning, and then maybe go out and do sales calls in the afternoon, and then sort of jump in and do training sessions the next day. And I think that was really important part of kind of like the culture as well. So although when we started, we would only have sort of a small number of people, but everybody kind of knew that they would have to jump in and sort of help with this or help with that. And I suppose that's how we kind of grew. Um, I think it was about 2006, we took on our first occupational health contract. And that really came from clients sort of saying they weren't happy with their current providers, they were happy with the service that we were providing. So we, brought in external help in terms of occupational health kind of specialists. But again, it was something that we kind of just grew based on the same way that we grew Hampton Knight from an alcohol and drug testing point of view. And yeah, learned quite quickly really how occupational health was actually quite different to alcohol and drug testing in a lot of ways. From sort of about 2006 through till sort of, well, for that sort of 10-year period, we operated the alcohol and drug test and the occupational health as two sort of divisions that kind of worked side by side. And then we, around about sort of 2016, 2017, we kind of came to realise that occupational health, it become quite a substantial part of the business, but it wasn't something that we really kind of knew how to take any further without sort of really investing quite heavily in sort of resources and clinical expertise, etc. And it was just sort of coincidental actually at the time that Medigold actually reached out to us, asking about alcohol and drug testing and how we could potentially support them on that side. Because at that point Medigold were outsourcing to a number of different providers and sort of having sort of inconsistency in the service, etc. So it was just really from there, just literally looking at how the businesses could work together. And then conversations kind of started to develop, and actually we realised it would be quite a nice fit between the two companies. And then obviously the actual acquisition went through at the end of 2017. And yeah, it was great really, because very similar backgrounds. So obviously being a family owned business as Hampton Knight, and obviously Medigold Health being a family business. Obviously Alex and the team were really easy to get on with. We sort of clicked quite quickly. And then obviously post acquisition, it really appealed to us because it allowed us to get back to alcohol and drug testing, which is what we know, which we're good at. That's what our area of expertise is. And then moved the occupational health through to the Medigold Health business. And then what we did was we sort of, on the reverse though, we took over the alcohol and drug delivery for the Medigold clients. And again, that was really interesting because they had still have a really big presence within rail, which is something that, although we were, Network Rail approved and we did testing, it wasn't something we specifically worked in terms of the rail companies. So yeah, it was challenging. The first year there was a lot to kind of go through, as you would again expect sort of post acquisition. There was a lot of integration work, a lot of work around sort of the marketing, obviously the people, integrating, etc. But sort of getting into sort of that year two, it really started to settle, and become really just felt part of the whole group quite quickly. COVID testing hit us hard, like a lot of businesses. So really kind of last March, the alcohol and drug testing literally came to pretty much a standstill. We were able to pivot quite quickly, and actually the collection service didn't have any downtime. We continued to operate. We had to work really quickly to put processes in place, sort of retrain the technicians, communicate with the clients to, basically make sure that we could continue to operate. Because like I was saying before, we do a lot of work with the rail clients, and they needed to continue to operate, and they obviously needed the support services like ourselves to continue to operate and respond. So as I say, there was no downtime, sorry, in terms of the alcohol and drug testing. But what we did quite quickly was pivoted towards COVID testing. Again, that was due to, inquiries from clients, working with sort of third parties where we could utilise our really established network of sort of nearly 100 people across the UK, and looking at how we could utilise that group of people, potentially not just for the A&D testing, but obviously for COVID testing. And that grew quite quickly. The first part of our work was actually supporting with the Formula One testing, the COVID testing for the Formula One. And then from there, working with the BBC and on a number of their productions through the end of last year, especially like Strictly Come Dancing and EastEnders. But again, it was a massive shift change. We had to train all of the technicians, put processes in place, and also because COVID was changing so quickly and so rapidly, we had to make sure that we were kind of one step ahead and able to support the clients with inquiries and queries that were coming through. So yeah, it was definitely a challenging time. It was tough, but kind of looking back now, I think we should all be really proud of what we achieved, because we managed to create basically a new service line overnight. We're able to support, a large amount of clients with COVID testing that allowed them to continue to operate and work through the COVID pandemic. And even now today is still something that's like an established part of our business now, and we've got a dedicated COVID team. We've got a dedicated team of COVID testers as well. So yeah, it's been good overall. So for the first sort of 5 years or so, we actually outsourced our testing service to a third party. And it was about 2005 that we decided to bring it in-house. So we started with a really, really small team of collectors. Obviously, we were part of that collection team that could respond quite quickly. I don't think really when we started the collection service that we anticipated it would get to the size that it is now. But we put a lot of time and effort into kind of building the network up over the years. And really it is what we're known for. It is definitely our reputation. And it's been very stable in terms of our response times. We now have just over 100 technicians across the UK and Ireland. And even over this last year during the pandemic, we've maintained sort of a 98-99% response time within 2 hours, which is definitely above, the industry average. Most of our call outs are responded to within an hour, which again is phenomenal. It's fantastic, and we couldn't do that really without the network that we've got in place. So yeah, I think there's still expansion plans that we're looking to do with the testing service. There's still kind of areas that we'd like to kind of improve on. We're just in the process now of looking at how we can digitalise the collection process, investing in sort of, the tablet devices, and how we can make it sort of easier, not only for our technicians, but also for our clients as well. So there's sort of like real-time reporting and accessing reports, etc. So yeah, I think it's out. Yeah, it's gone above and beyond what we expected it to do sort of back in 2005, but we can still see room for it to continue to grow and expand as well.